Hi there, this is Shane. I'm just going to start sharing my screen. We will give it a moment or two for people to dial in. Thank you to everyone who's already here. I hope you're having a beautiful day. So today's webinar is going to be quite an interesting one. We're going to be talking about an open source database for open source automation for issues like compliance and security. This is a topic that we have brought up a few times over the years, thinking, well, that could be very useful. And now we will indeed get to see one that actually exists. Before we start this talk, I'm going to show our antitrust policy notice. We show this at the beginning of every meeting, and this is to ensure that everyone is aware of the Linux Foundation's antitrust policy and can find it easily on our website. If you have any questions, you can ask our counsel, Andy Updegrove, if you're from a Linux Foundation member company. Now, I don't want to take up much time. The topic is the key here. So what I'm going to do is hand over to Karen from OSADL, who will talk about this. OSSelot, the open source curation database. Karen, I'm going to hand over to you. I'll switch off my screen share, which means you can also start sharing your screen.
Perfect. Thank you, Shane. Good morning, everyone. I'll just share this right away. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Does that work? Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's perfect.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So Shane already introduced me. Thanks to that. My name's Karen. I'm with OSADL, with the Open Source Automation Development Lab, and I'm really happy that today I get to present our newest project to you. It was launched actually just last year, just before Christmas, so it's fairly new, although we've been working on it for a bit longer. So it is, as Shane already said, it's on sharing and reusing open source compliance information. And I think I don't need to talk a lot about why that is a useful thing today here with this audience, but just let me use a few words on that anyway. We all know that open source software is successful because we can save development resources, we can save a lot of frustration by reusing existing components. However, especially in companies that are just starting with open source software, that are just starting a compliance process, some of the time of the effort that is saved by reusing these existing components is negatively compensated by the additional effort that's required to scan and clear open source for license compliant use. It's still much better than developing your own components, but it does need additional efforts. However, there are many open source components that are deployed in exactly the same way by a large number of users. And we've been asked, same as you probably, we've been asked for many, many, many years by our members, hasn't someone else done this already? Why do we have to redo the same work again and again and again? So why not share these compliance tasks in the same way as we share the software development? And if we look at what part of the compliance tasks we can share, we can look at a very basic, very rough open source compliance tool chain. So we analyze what kind of software we use, then we do scanning and curating of compliance data, so what licenses are used, what copyright notices are contained in the source code, and extract that information to be delivered along with the software. Then there's clearing, so are the identified licenses actually acceptable for the intended use case of that software component, and then saving all of that information in some kind of component catalog, some kind of bill of material. So of course, not all of these steps can be shared because some of them are quite individual. But when we talk about sharing and reusing curation data, we're at the second step here, so quite in the beginning. So here, instead of scanning and curating the same software packages again and again, we may be able to reuse curated compliance information or even contribute your own curations to a public database. Why hasn't this been done years and years ago? Well, there's two main hurdles, I would say. One of them is liability, of course. So for the persons, for the organizations providing this information, it is legally relevant information. How can we make sure that the liability for providing this information is limited as far as possible? And on the other side, for you using this legal information, how can you trust the database? How can you trust the information that is provided, trust in its correctness? Well, liability, I think we know that by now, also with the material that OpenChain provides, can be limited by licensing very generously. So a license like the CC0 that gives maximum rights means that gift regulations apply. So liability only applies for willful intent and gross negligence, which we won't have. We hopefully won't have in this kind of data. And also, I think because what has changed over the last few years is that there are no known lawsuits with respect to any kind of supply, at least in the open source environment, of incorrect legal information for open source software. So reservations have generally lessened. And I think also this is an issue that was always stronger in the US than it was in Europe, but even there it seems to have lessened. So I think the time's just right now to provide such information. And then on the other side of the coin, we have trust. So how can you establish trust in the information that's provided? Well, first of all, of course, the quality of the data. So the curation has to be done conscientiously and diligently, and by a person who has the required expertise and who also stands for the quality of the information with their name. Of course, there needs to be a review process, a transparent review process, and then you'll need an organization as well that stands with its reputation for the quality of the project. So this is what we have now. Time is right. So the OSSelot project was launched. It's called OSSelot, like the little cat. OSSelot, a lot of open source software, the open source curation database. You can find the actual data on GitHub at this link on the open source compliance repository package analysis. This contains license and copyright analysis results for, I think today it's about 125 different packages. When I say license and copyright analysis results, so each of these directories contains, for each package version, it contains a README with some metadata, a package URL, download location, reviews, comments, and so on. Then an SPDX tag value file, with the concluded licenses, copyright notices, comments on decisions on a file base, and then a disclosure document with aggregated license text, copyright notices, and acknowledgements. And all of this data is created at the moment with Fossology. So the disclosure document, first of all, how can you use that? Well, it's basically for reusing unmodified packages in exactly the way, in exactly the version that is given in the repository. So you have all the license text, all the copyright notices, all the required acknowledgements, if applicable, available in one file. If you use this exact component in an unmodified way, you can just use this disclosure document and deliver it along with your software. So as easy as you can imagine. And then the SPDX tag value file, that is more for automatic reuse. That can also be, it can be read by machines as well. And so for automatic reuse and for also clearing maybe help clearing software versions that are not available in the database yet. And in the rest of the talk today, I'll put more of a focus on how this SPDX tag value file can be reused. So I'll show two examples, two use cases, what you can do with this data. But first of all, we've made the experience that while SPDX is a good standard, going by what we have, it is still very, very helpful to just make clear what is meant in a particular case with the individual tags. So because sometimes they are not exactly unambiguous, so I would just like to make clear in what way we define the tags in the SPDX tag value file. Of course, this information you can also find in the repository. There's a very nice README file, and there's a very nice FAQ section as well. So first part of the SPDX tag value file, the creation information, I think that's fairly obvious. We have the person who created the data. As I said before, it's a part of the trust process to see who actually creates the data, to maybe know that person, know that they are an expert, that they work well, that they work very diligently. And a lot of or most of the curation in the OSSelot project has been done by Oliver Fendt, and if you know him, you know that he works very, very well and doesn't miss a lot at all. So this is data that you can trust. Then there's a comment on how the data was created, and here you can already see, please check license comments for explanation of concluded licenses. So we'll see what's behind that in a moment. Then we have some package information, name of the package, a checksum, and then here the package license declared. So this is not yet available for all of the packages in the database because, well, this has just been set a few weeks ago, I think. So only if there is a main license for the package, so a license maybe in the root directory and a license file and a copying file, maybe in the README, then we'll set this package license declared. However, watch out, and it also says this in the package license comment down here, this license is not automatically valid for all files, because as you know, in a software package, there's usually more than one license that is valid for the files in the package. And also no compatibility checks have been performed as part of the curation here. So we only look at the single files on a file basis. And then, of course, the file information in the SPDX tag value file, we have the file name, we have a checksum, and then here we have the license concluded. So the final license decision that was made as part of the curation step. If required, so if the license decision is not absolutely obvious, then you can find an explanation here in the license comment. Down here you will have the scanner findings, and then at the bottom here the file, the copyright notices from this file. So I think one of the most relevant parts are here the license concluded and the license comment. That's where most of the work is in. And then, of course, at the bottom of the file, as you know, with SPDX, you have the final license text, then reference to these license IDs. And if, especially for BSD, for the BSD licenses, for the MIT licenses, if it's not a generic license text, then you'll find it here with a hash, and you'll find the exact matching license text that's valid for that file. So how can you use this data? Well, there's different ways of reusing this SPDX data to clear packages. And the first example I would like to show is to reusing the curated data within OSSology. We'll take as an example OpenSSL. So let's assume currently even the newest version of OpenSSL is already scanned and curated, but let's assume there's only an older version curated available in the database and you would like to use in your version. So how would you proceed? Or you would like the old version, but you modified some files. How would you proceed? So first of all, you download the curated data of OpenSSL from the project page and upload the source files into Fossology. So this is the project page here. The GitHub repo, you see we're in OpenSSL version 3.0.5. You find here the README, you find some information on the README. By now there's also a package URL given in the README. Then you'll find the OSS disclosure text file here that you can reuse if you're just using the package unmodified in exactly that version. And you'll find the SPDX tag value file. So you download the SPDX tag value file, you use the, you copy the download link, and you upload the source code to Fossology. So you probably all know if you've used Fossology before, you know what that looks like. You upload from a URL, you select the usual scanners, and you scan for whatever you prefer. At least copyright and licenses, though, you use the different license scanners, and then you use the SPDX tag value file. At the moment, because Fossology only accepts the RDF format for import, you still have to convert the tag value file into an RDF format, but SPDX provides tools for that, so that can be done quite easily. Then you import this whole thing into Fossology, and with this one import, 3,303 of 3,318 files are automatically cleared. So you use the report import functionality here of Fossology to do that, and then you see that with one single step you've cleared almost all packages, but except for the last 15 packages here that you'll have to look at manually. So that is quite a lot of work that's already saved here. And then you can review the data, or you can modify, or for files that you have changed, you can add your modifications here, the modified information. However, you can also reuse this information then to clear a different version. Let's take version 3.0.7 at this example. So again, we do the same step. We upload the source files into Fossology, but now we use the reuse functionality of Fossology and reference the already cleared package, so OpenSSL 3.0.5. And this is what that looks like. So again, the upload, and then down here we find the reuse functionality of Fossology, and we reference the package that was just cleared with the data from the curation database, and then it turns out that only 227 files of 3,329 must still be cleared individual. So those are the files that have been added new or that have changed. So less than 7% of the work still has to be done manually. And actually most of these can be done with one single bulk scan. I see there's just a question in the chat. So yeah, I forgot to say, but of course you're welcome to interrupt me at any time for questions. So is the use of custom license ref identifiers also for common licenses needed to ease data import in Fossology? Is there another reason? No, I think that's just the way that Fossology does it. So there's really no reason for common licenses if it's a generic license text, but that's the way that Fossology exports the SPDX tag value file. As far as I know, there's no other reason. But for compliance reasons, if we look at the licenses, it doesn't really hurt, because you need to give the license text anyway, and with whatever ID you reference them to each other, I think for compliance, it doesn't really matter. Okay, you're welcome. Yeah, okay, again, here we see how much work we saved. I think it's quite impressive. So of course, using the data within Fossology is only one way. This can also be used, this can also be scripted, especially if you want to deliver, or if you only want to use those that compliance information that is actually compiled into your binary. And if that is the case, you can integrate the curation data into a build process. So for every source file that's actually compiled into a binary, the compliance information is extracted from the SPDX tag value file via the checksum. That's why the checksums are there. And then this information can be combined and now only contains those licenses that must actually be considered for distribution of the binary. Because as you know, such a source package also has a lot of files that are not distributed at all, so their licenses don't really matter in the end. And then this process can also be used to list all files without a matching checksum, so that have been changed or that are new, and these can then be checked individually. So basically what Fossology does, but just automatically. And I'll go through the example that I have here fairly quickly, because I think it's quite, everyone has to, can script this themselves, or it'll also be part of the toolscape that will be provided along with OSSelot. So the example we took here is BusyBox, and the first step, of course, is in some way, depending on your build process, find out which source files are actually compiled into your binary, be it by using compiler flags or via a symbol table, so whatever works with your build process. Then creating checksums for all of those files, and then picking the file info. You remember this is what it looks like in the SPDX file, from the SPDX file, and then assemble it basically into a new aggregated SPDX file. And I think it's quite obvious this can easily be scripted, in this case just with a shell script. The changed files can be listed in the same way, and as a last step, you can just get all the concluded licenses from this assembled SPDX file and add the respective license texts from the SPDX file with the license identifier to the assembled SPDX file. So also can just be scripted with a shell script. What do we have as a result? Well, we have a list of all source files that were compiled into the binary. We have a list of all source files that were changed with respect to the curated data. And we have a list of all compiled files that are present in the curated data. And we have an SPDX tag value file with all those compiled files that are present, including the concluded licenses, including copyright notices and license text. I'll just check the questions. Also, by integrating them with other scan tools except for Fossology. At the moment, not. So you'll have to see. I think there's quite a lot of scan tools available that allow for the import of SPDX tag value files. So at the moment, it depends on the scan tool, but part of this project is also to provide conversion tools, to provide some kind of any kind of tools that are required to reuse the data in a helpful way with the tools that are out there. So if you have any questions, any requests that you need, any way that anything you need provided to reuse the data, you can contact us there. Okay, so let me quickly conclude, and because I wanted to very quickly show you the OSSelot website as well. So we know that there's a lot of tools out there. We also know that not everything can be automated, however much we want it to be automated and however much I've been talking about automation now. And we always need some human expertise, some manual labor, but still reusing curated compliance information reduces the required effort significantly. And the OSSelot project provides a database that can be trusted with curated compliance information for frequently used FOSS components. And we've actually, because OSSADL comes from automation industry, we've started with those components that are required for or that are useful for embedded Linux projects. The curated data can help to automate clearing of FOSS, but you'll always need some manual input and review. The OSSelot project has a webpage, OSSelot.org. It has news, explanations, example use cases. As I said, there's some tools, or maybe at the moment more to-do lists for tools available, but the curated material is available publicly via GitHub at the open source compliance package analysis repository. So any questions, requests, contributions, of course, are very welcome. You can always contact us at info@ossadl.org. And before we go to the OSSelot.org webpage, I'll see if there's another question. Oh, yeah, there's another question. How does OSSelot correlate to clearly defined projects? Same or similar data between the projects? No, at the moment, not. And I don't think it's intended to be. I think one of the reasons that OSSelot was founded and that it is set up in the way that it is because the clearly defined project, first of all, for the OSSADL members, wasn't very useful because it doesn't have a lot of components available that you require for embedded Linux systems. And the reason we use these simple text files with very clear information is because reuse is simplified and it's easier. In our opinion, it is easier to establish trust in the project if you have a clear and easy to reuse format available as well. Why tag values default is the most hard person from the possible ones on SPDX? Well, it's I don't know if I can answer that. I think tag value is because it is possible to read it. It's possible to be read by humans and machines in the same way. I think this is why I actually quite like it. How do you handle components that are licensed under EDL? There's no SPDX available. Are you then using ES2.3? So the thing is, we don't strictly adhere to the SPDX IDs, actually. We do where possible, but the thing is that it is conclusive in itself. So if you have a reference and then you have under the same reference you have the license text, then if the reference is not strictly SPDX ID, then you can still find the reference and reference the file to the license text there. So it is conclusive in itself. So I'll quickly change my screen share and show the OSSelot web page while we're at it. So on OSSelot.org, you'll find the OSSelot page, and you can find some more detailed information. You can find some introductory articles. You can find information on the people who do the curation at the moment. You can find presentations on use cases. There's some videos here from the launch of the project that explain a lot of background on the project as well. As I mentioned before, there's a tool page which doesn't contain a lot of tools yet, but which will hopefully grow. And then most interestingly, you have the data tab here, and you see there's 125 packages that have been analyzed, more than 230,000 files. And here you can see the list of packages, and which I think is quite impressive. You can see the way that the OSSelot repository is growing over time. So you can see the packages that are added, the files that are added. So there's new content coming into the repository almost every day, every few days. So there's a lot of ongoing work. You're welcome to have a look around the repository. Of course, you can find the link on the web page as well, down here, or look around the OSSelot project page. So there's a lot more questions coming in the chat here. How do you handle, now we've had this one, to get a list of all compiled files? I have this tool. Okay, thank you, Philip. Yeah, that's very nice. Yeah, it depends. Yes, it can be quite complicated depending on your build process to actually find out all the source files. So thanks for that. Yes, the SPDX tools that are provided, they provide conversions from basically every format into every other format. The link for guideline standards, the contribution of data. Yes, go to the repository. So the contribution goes via the GitHub repository, and I see Oliver is here as well. So he maintains the GitHub repository, and he at the moment does the reviews as well. So you can go to the repository, read the README, read the FAQ on how the curation is done, and then you can contribute via GitHub, just via a normal pull request. Yes. So we also accept other tools or results from other tools. It doesn't really matter. The result is important. All right. Are there any other questions coming up? Thanks everyone for your interest anyway.
So we have an interesting one, by the way, and thank you, Karen, for a really great presentation. One came in from Andreas, which is, how is the project funded?
At the moment, it's funded through OSSelot. So OSSelot, you might know, is a registered cooperative. So our members pool money, and we fund projects that are useful for all our members and also for the wider community. So at the moment, it's just funded via OSSelot membership fee.
That's good to know. And we had a second question from Sheriff, just asking, are there curation guidelines? So how to curate the data?
Yes, definitely. You can find them on the GitHub repository. The README is quite useful for curation guidelines, and you'll find some FAQ there as well. If there's any questions you have you don't find on there, you're always welcome to contact us as well.
Fantastic. And Yari had a quick question. At the moment, it seems this is file level. How about code snippets? How do they fit into the picture?
No, we don't do any snippet scanning. So this is just informational scanning. And I don't think there's any plans on doing code snippet scanning. That's just file level.
And finally, I have a question. So a lot of interest, obviously. We have a very big webinar audience live today, and it will be even bigger counting all the people watching the recording. The question is, how can people help? What do you need people to do to help this project continue to succeed?
Well, of course, use the data, have a look at it, see if you can use it, if it is useful in the way it is presented to you. I think that's the first step. And then the next step as well, contribute. So, of course, such a project is only really useful if the data grows, if there's a lot of data available. So if you did curation of packages, if you're missing, or maybe if some that are not available yet, please go ahead and see if you can contribute them. That'll help the project to grow and help everyone to make it more useful for everyone. And then review, of course. So if you do use the data and you do find things that don't work out, then let us know.
Now, we just saw Lubos over at SUSE said that they have a massive database of about 20,000 packages, and he'll take an action item to see if previously reviewed data could be imported. So that's potentially a very
Wow.
interesting contribution and
Yeah,
collaboration.
very interesting. That's very
Uh,
cool.
we have a question from Stephen as well. How do you select the initial packages that you included? What did you do to select those first packages?
Well, that's mainly just a question for Oliver, mainly. I think this is, as I mentioned before, we are focused on embedded Linux systems, so you'll find packages that are useful for embedded Linux, that you'll find the base packages for there. And I'm actually surprised that it hasn't come up yet. The Linux kernel is being worked on. Oliver is working hard on the Linux kernel, so I think that'll be on there soonish.
All right, it looks like we are heading towards the end of this discussion. Karen, that's a huge amount of information for us, and this is a very promising project. Thank you so much for coming here, for giving us access to this overview, and we'll be promoting the recording of this webinar heavily to try to make sure that more and more people are aware of this. In particular, here in Asia, I'm based in Japan, I'll be making sure that the Japanese, Korean, Taiwanese, and Chinese work groups have a good chance to watch this. So let's keep working together. Let's see where we can go with this very first open database for open source compliance and potentially security scanning as well.
Thanks for having me, and any questions, you're welcome to contact me at any time.
Wonderful. And just ending there, Philip noted in the comments that there is an event happening in FOSDEM, which is also an opportunity for people to talk about open source tooling and open source compliance. So this particular event will be happening on the 3rd of February. I'm just going to pull it up on the screen very quickly. There you go. So this event is going to just happen as a one-day workshop for open source compliance tooling, and everyone is very welcome to get involved. The link is in the chat there. Okay, everyone, thank you very much for being here. It's wonderful to have had this very large webinar. I'll get the recording out within 24 hours, I hope, and start promoting it so more people are aware. Follow-up questions can be on our mailing lists. You can contact me directly. You can contact Karen directly. As usual, just ask a question anywhere and we will work to answer it. Have a beautiful and safe day, everyone. Take care.